when your pants get knighted? Wow. Wow. You got to let it run to the end. The best part was the trademark logo popping up at the end of that thing. Run the whole thing. No, I'm kidding. I had to grab my Bible and notes. I don't think I'm on either. This is for you. It's a gift. You guys are silly. Wow. All right, if you have your Bibles, you can turn to the book of Matthew, chapter 16. Matthew 16. Did you know? She knew. Oh, it's on the note sheets. That's right. Matthew chapter 16. Matthew chapter 16. This is a really important part of Scripture. I'm excited. We're launching into a little series of preparing us for Easter, talking about the cross and asking the question, what does the cross tell us about who Jesus is and about who God is? So Matthew chapter 16, Jesus is talking with his disciples, and he asks them a really important question. So Jesus has been in ministry for like 2.5 years now. He's been walking around with people. People have seen him do all sorts of miracles and crazy things. He's made dead people come alive. He's healed sick people. He's like taken leprosy away from people. Like he's preached a lot of really challenging messages. He's confronted authorities. And people are like really questioning, who is this guy? Like, who does he think he is? Like, you have to remember, like, we hear Jesus now, we're like, oh yeah, Jesus is God. He's like this powerful guy, did a bunch of miracles, died on a cross for our sins. But like, these people are living in the middle of the Jesus story. They didn't see Jesus die on a cross yet. They don't have the whole Bible like we do. They have some Old Testament scriptures, but they're trying to make sense of like, there's this random dude, and he is just tearing it up. He's doing all sorts of crazy miracles. We ain't never seen nothing like this. He like gets rid of demons. Like, what's up with that? He's preaching all these really hard sayings, like telling us about how we should care for poor people and like turning upside down our worldview, telling us that we should have these really high moral standards. Like, this is a totally crazy thing. And everyone's trying to come to grips with, who is this guy? And so in Matthew chapter 16, Jesus asks his followers an important question. And we can read it here, picking up in verse 13, and it says, "Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' And they said, 'Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others Jeremiah or one of the prophets.'" See, everyone has an opinion about Jesus, and they have these different ideas. You know, maybe Jesus is John the Baptist, and like this is confusing, but like in this ancient world, like they don't have social media, they don't have Instagram, they don't have Twitter. It's like they don't have like direct second news. And so you just kind of hear names back and forth. And so you hear about this guy named John the Baptist, then you hear about this other guy doing miracles, and you're like, maybe those are the same people. What's going on? Other people, they're like reading the Bible, and they hear all these things about Elijah in the Bible. And like when you read back to Elijah's this crazy guy who does these incredible miracles and all sorts of stuff. And like, well, maybe this is just like Elijah reborn. Like, what's going on? People are just shooting out all these different theories. It's like a Marvel movie on steroids. Like, remember the first, like I'm a huge Marvel fanboy, and so I'm going to preach what I know. And so when the MCU was first starting, we were like, Phase 1, and they'd give us little clips of Thanos at the end of the movies. And like, if you weren't a comic book buff, my buddy was like this huge comic book buff, and so he kind of spoiled it all for me because he knew all this stuff about Thanos, and I had no idea. I just watched the movies and love them. I don't ever read any of the comics. No shame if you do, no shame if you don't. That's just me, right? But we'd get these hints dropped, and so me and my brothers would be like talking, who is Thanos? What do you think is up with him? What's up with these Infinity Stones? What do you think is going to happen? And like, we're just debating because we don't know. We don't know nothing. And this is what it's like for these people. They're like talking Jesus. What is this guy? What's going on? Who is he? And in the same way, I think today everyone has an opinion about Jesus. Even though we have a Bible, even though like we have churches, everyone's got an opinion about who Jesus is. And like we've enrolled some of those in that bumper of like, who do people say he is? So some people talk about him like a myth or like a Greek god. Like just this ancient dude wasn't really real. And there's this whole branch of like fake scholarship that's like trying to prove that Jesus wasn't real. It's called historical Jesus, which is like this weird oxymoron because you'd think that people saying historical Jesus would believe in the historical. Never mind. There's people who say it's a myth. Other people are like, yeah, Jesus was just this great moral teacher. He had some good ideas, but ultimately he was just another human, just another person. Everyone's got opinions. So pastors get up and they have all sorts of opinions. And I have some ideas about who Jesus is. And I study really hard, and I read this book really hard because I think my ideas about Jesus are right, and I want to invite you into what I think is the truth. But there's plenty of opinions. There's plenty of ideas. You can watch some YouTube videos, and you'll get all sorts of crazy, kooky ideas. So, like, I watch a lot of YouTube just for fun because I'm a big YouTube guy. And so I'll see these channels of, like, these power atheist guys. They're like, I'm the smartest dude on the internet. I'm going to prove to you why Christianity's fake, why Jesus is a false guy. They're dumb, by the way. They don't know nothing. Like, if you have any sort of understanding of the Bible, any sort of understanding about the history, any sort of understanding about this stuff, you'd know it in a minute. But because a lot of people are uninformed and uneducated, it just kind of goes right through their heads. They got opinions. Teachers, your parents, your friends, they all have opinions about who Jesus is. And you can ask your high school teacher, and they may not give you a straight answer, but they may. And everyone's got an idea. Everyone's got an idea. But look how Jesus continues this thing. So his disciples are saying, some say you're John the Baptist. Others say you're Elijah. Others say Jeremiah, one of the prophets. Matthew chapter 16, verse 15. He said to them, but who do you say I am? Who do you say I am? And this, I think, is the most important question. Does not matter what some person on the internet thinks about Jesus. It does not matter what your parents think about Jesus. Does not matter what your friends, what your teachers think about Jesus. It does not matter what I think about Jesus. The important question is, who do you say that Jesus is? Who do you say that Jesus is? And so I put that on your notes as just like an introductory question. Maybe you just want to jot down an answer of who do you say that Jesus is? And Peter's going to answer this in the next verse, and we're going to talk more about his answer in future weeks. No, don't spoil it. We don't want him to... Kidding. It's not the end of the world. We're going to talk more about his answer in future weeks. But for now, I just want to leave you with this question. Who is Jesus to you? Who is Jesus to you? And that's what we're going to seek to answer over the next few weeks. So we are in this season as a church, the season of Lent. This is just something that prepares us for Easter. And so we're going to reflect for the next few weeks on the central moment of our faith, the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And as we do, we're going to look at the story of Jesus from some different angles, some different points of view. And these are going to tell us who Jesus is from the Bible. Because ultimately, everyone has an opinion about who Jesus is, but what matters is the answer that this book gives us. And what this book says about Jesus, this is the truth. So we want to find out, what does the Bible say about Jesus? Who does the Bible say that Jesus is? And hopefully, as we do this, you will come to a better understanding of who Jesus is for you. So, I'm going to say this. This isn't a blank, but you can write it down if you want. The cross gives us a picture of who Jesus is. Here's some language I want you to be familiar with. The cross is an apocalypse. The cross is an apocalypse. This word apocalypse is an important word. I want you to be a little bit familiar with it. By the end of this series, hopefully you kind of understand what I mean when I say the cross is an apocalypse. The word apocalypse, we hear it and we think like end of the world. That's not really what it means. The word apocalypse means like an unveiling, like pulling back the curtain. It's like when we got to the end of the MCU and we realized who Thanos was. We had an apocalyptic moment. When he snapped his fingers and like people went poof, that was an apocalyptic moment. It's like, oh, I thought he was just like another bad dude that they'd kill really easily. I thought that Thor would like kill him, but then he said, you should have gone for the head and snapped everyone out of existence. And that was an apocalypse. Because I realized in a moment, whoa, this dude is way badder than I thought that he was. This dude is way more of a villain than I ever thought. And in the same way, the cross is an apocalypse because it shows us who Jesus is. And we can have all sorts of opinions and ideas about Jesus' life. We can have all sorts of opinions about his death. But when we see the cross, when we meet Jesus hanging on the cross, we have an apocalyptic moment. It's like we see, whoa, I thought some different things, but whoa, Jesus is totally different than what I thought. So if you want an accurate picture of God, you need to wrestle with Jesus hanging on the cross. So in the church, we like to make the cross kind of a beautiful thing. We'll turn it into jewelry. We'll wear it around our necks. We'll make it a symbol that we put on our Bibles. We'll like turn it into artwork. But like if you think about it, that's kind of weird because the cross is not that beautiful. The cross is like a little bit scandalous. The cross is like, you can think about like a torture device is what this is. For like an ancient world, this is like a symbol of Rome's power and authority. You see a cross and you don't think cute. You think like blood and gore and guts. The cross is not a beautiful thing when it's in its original context. You think like an electric chair is like what we could think about today. Who would wear like a necklace with an electric chair on it? Andrew would wear any necklace though. He's a big necklace guy. Like that's a little bit weird. Or like if like we made a pulpit and made it in the shape of an electric chair, that'd be a little bit weird. And yet we do this. And I'm not dagging on dagging. What am I trying to say? I'm not attacking the cross pulpit or anything. I'm all for that. That stuff is cool. But it is a symbol of like public humiliation. For us, this is like a noose hanging from a tree. And like what that symbol implies to us, living in a post-1960s America, living after like all sorts of violence. This is what it represents. It's like this noose hanging from a tree. It's a scandalous torture device meant to kill and prove the power of the Roman Empire. And yet, despite all the ugliness of the cross is the beauty that saves the world. On the cross, Jesus absorbs our sin. On the cross, Jesus defeats the power of sin and death. On the cross, Jesus becomes the King of the world. On the cross, the true power of God is displayed. John 10:18, I'll point you to this verse real quick, and you just throw it up on the screen so I don't have to turn there. Jesus says this, he says, speaking of his life, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have the authority to lay it down, and I have the authority to take it up again. This is the charge I have received from my Father. Jesus displays power on the cross. He says, this is my life, and I'm going to choose to give it up, and then I'm going to choose to take it up again. So the cross reveals, and here's what we're going to go to this week, in the next few minutes. The cross reveals Jesus as a suffering servant. The cross reveals Jesus as a suffering servant. On the cross, Jesus suffers for our sin on our behalf. So we're going to go to the book of Isaiah, chapter 53. You can turn there, and I'm going to set up the story for us. In the book of Isaiah, we get this really beautiful picture of who Jesus is. So I'm going to catch you up because chapter 53 is towards the end of the book of Isaiah, and I want to catch you up to where we are in the story of this book. So Israel is in this covenant relationship with God. They've like devoted themselves to him, and they've said, hey, you're our God, we're your people, we're going to worship you. And they fail again and again and again. They have worshipped other gods repeatedly. They have disobeyed all of God's commandments. They've been unfaithful to him. They're in a bad place. And as a result, they've been driven into exile. They've been pushed out of the land that God promised them. They've been taken over by a foreign nation. Their temple has been destroyed. They're in shambles. Their nation is in a bad spot. And this is a direct result of their bad decisions. They picked a fight with the wrong people. They rebelled against the wrong nation, and they've experienced some consequences. But Isaiah tells us that this situation that they find themselves in is also a result of God's judgment on them for their sin. Because they've abandoned God, God has removed his hand of protection from them, and he's allowed them to be taken over and destroyed by their enemies. Isaiah is telling Israel's story, how they've abandoned God, followed false gods, fallen into idolatry, and now they face God's wrath and judgment. And you and I are no better in 2021. Like, we might read this and be like, man, those guys, if only they knew. But we're just as bad. We have our own idols. Maybe not golden statues that we bow down to. Maybe that's not your thing. But we've rejected God and substituted things in his place. Maybe it's a career. Maybe it's a passion that you have. Maybe it's your athletics. Maybe it's your grades. Maybe it's a relationship that you have. You know, whatever you want to fill in that blank. There's something for us that we've made like an ultimate thing. And we've said, God, screw you. I don't care about what you have to say. I care about how I want to live my life. I care about what I want to do with my time. I care about what I want to do with my future. Or we take these good things and we make them the center of our lives. We build our lives around pursuing a guy or pursuing a girl. We build our lives around making a lot of money. We build our lives around being successful or making good grades or having a good Fortnite KD ratio. And like all these things, like these good things, but we take God out of the center and we put these things in the middle. And this is just the same idolatry. We reject the wisdom of God and we have our own instead. And we're in the same boat as Israel and we suffer for it. So here's your first blank. Sin brings suffering. Sin brings suffering. If you haven't gotten the picture yet, we've like hammered on this the last few weeks, and like this is just where we are. We need to recognize this in our world. Sin destroys everything that it touches. Some of you, like you're living this out and you're seeing how sin is destroying your life, and it's destroying things that you love and things you like. Sin takes away the good things that we have. We've talked about this as God's passive wrath. That this is the wrath of God revealed against sin. God removes his hand of protection, and he allows us to suffer with the consequences of our poor decisions. He lets us just run our lives off the rails. It's like you're driving up the mountain to Big Bear, and God just lets you drive off the side of the road. He takes that guardrail off. He says, okay, you want to be your own boss? You want to live your life your way? Okay, I'm going to let you, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems. It's going to cause your life to fall apart. Sin brings suffering, but sin also brings judgment. Sin also brings judgment. That's your second thing. God is not only passive in judgment. He doesn't just let sin destroy us. He actively destroys it. He actively destroys sin. This is the good news, right? Sin will eventually come to an end. Injustice will eventually come to an end. God is going to destroy sin. This is good news. God will not allow his good world to be tainted by the evil of sin and the power of sin. There will be a day when he destroys sin utterly. But the justice of God is a double-edged sword, because this is bad news for those of us who have participated in sin. Those of us who have made sin our lifestyle, those of us who have rejected God's wisdom and chosen our own, and that's everyone in the room. We've all done this. There's not a single one of us who's exempt from sin, from this thing. We will not be spared from judgment. There's no one who's without fault. There's no one who's without sin. And all of us, because God hates sin. God hates things that destroy his good world. And for those of us who have actively participated in destroying the good world that God made, we are also under the judgment of God. And sin will bring judgment on our lives. This is what the story that Isaiah is telling. He's saying, hey, you've fallen into sin, and now you're experiencing the judgment of God. And I'm saying that we are right here with Israel in this story. We're in the same exact boat. We have faced the judgment of God for our sin. We can see it in our society. You can feel it in your life, and one day you're going to experience it in eternity. There will be judgment from God coming. And now Isaiah has reached a point in the story where the next line should be, and everybody died. Like he's built a case. He's told us how evil and awful sin is, how evil and awful Israel is, and by association, how evil and awful and messed up and terrible we are. We are just as bad. And the very next word should be, and everyone died. God sent a lightning bolt from heaven, burned up humanity because they were wicked. Like that's where we should go. And that's about the point we are today. We don't know right from wrong. We don't know left from right. We think we know better than God. And we deserve wrath. We deserve wrath. I know this is such a positive, encouraging message. We're going to get there. Don't worry. It will be positive and encouraging. But right now, we need to hear the bad news before we can receive and accept and understand how good the good news is. Because we deserve wrath. So like, as Christians, we kind of use our own Christian lingo, Christianese. And like, we say these things like, are you saved? What does that mean? Like, are you saved? And we think of that as like, are you going to go to heaven when you die? But like, if you think about that phrase, are you saved? Saved from what? Saved from yourself? Saved from the world? Well, the answer is saved from the wrath of God. God saves us from himself, actually. Like, this is what it means to be saved. We're saved from God's wrath. That God is going to pour out wrath against sin. He's going to bring judgment against sin. And I said this last week, the last couple weeks, like the wrath of God doesn't make him a bad dude. That proves that he loves us. That proves that he loves his world. Because someone who doesn't have wrath is not really loving. Like we said this, Moises, like if I punch your kid in the face, you're going to have some wrath towards me because you're a loving father. You love your son. And out of protection for your son, you're going to destroy anything that threatens him. And in the same way, God loves his world. God loves his kids. And any of us who threaten to destroy God's world by participating in sin, any of us who reject the wisdom of God and say we want to do better, we know better, God's going to destroy us because he hates the things that destroy his world. So this is where we should be in this story, right? The next word should be, God killed everyone, the end. But Isaiah's story takes a strange turn. And we come to chapter 53, and this is part of this series that Isaiah starts called the Servant Songs. It's this description of a mysterious figure called my servant, or the servant of the Lord. So we're going to pick this up in chapter 53, verse 1 through 11. Isaiah says, who has believed what he has heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? For he, and this is talking about this mysterious servant figure, for he grew up before him like a young plant, and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and as one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed.
All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people? And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich man in his death. Although he had done no violence, there was no deceit in his mouth, yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of our Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. So right when you think Israel is toast, right when God should rightfully destroy this nation that has so utterly abandoned him and rejected him and brought his judgment, this servant steps up. He shows up. He takes Israel's place. He bears their judgment and suffering. So it tells us he bears their grief and their sorrows. It tells us that their punishment is upon him. And this is the story of Jesus. Like, we can go one for one correlation between this and the story of Jesus. So it tells us he has no majesty or form of greatness. Well, Jesus is born in a barn. Like, that's pretty unmajestic. Tells us he's despised and rejected by many. Well, that's Jesus. His closest friends desert him right before his death. Tells us that he's smitten by God. Well, what does Jesus say in some of his final moments? My God, why have you forsaken me? Tells us he opened not his mouth, a lamb silent before the slaughter and on trial. Jesus refuses to speak. He keeps his mouth shut. Tells us he's pierced, he's wounded, he's chastised. This is a description of the incredible physical suffering that Jesus undergoes as he's beaten with whips, as he's had a crown of thorns forced on his head, as he has nails driven through his arms and nailed to a cross, lifted up as he suffocates to death. Like, this is a gory, brutal picture. Then finally a rich man gives him his tomb, and that's the story of Jesus. This is what has been laid out for us in Isaiah. It's given us this picture of Jesus. This is who Jesus is. He is this suffering servant. So we are just like Israel, and Jesus is just like this servant. He has taken our grief upon himself. He's taken our punishment upon himself. Verse 5, it tells us the chastisement that brought us peace was upon him. This word chastisement is this picture of intense physical suffering. It's literally the word for being beaten with whips. So that's what we're told. As Jesus is being beaten with whips at his execution, as he's undergoing brutal suffering, the Bible's telling us that this was for us. This was for us. This was the punishment that we deserved. The punishment that was supposed to go on us, the wrath of God that was supposed to go on us. Jesus stepped up and took our place. Jesus stepped up and bore our pain. He took it on his back, literally. All the punishment that we deserved is poured out on Jesus. You can fill this in. Jesus was punished so you don't have to be. Jesus was punished so you don't have to be. And if there's any one point I could get into your heads, it'd be this. Jesus was punished so that you don't have to be. This is what it means that Jesus is the suffering servant. He is this figure in Isaiah. He is this figure who, when we deserve the wrath of God, he steps up and takes the punishment. Jesus takes our place, bears the wrath of God in our place. Verse 6 says, all of us, like sheep, have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity, the sin of us all. All of your sin is on Jesus. Like, feel that weight just lift off your shoulders. All of it, 100% on Jesus. You are free from guilt. You are free from shame. You are free from punishment. Verse 10 tells us that his soul makes an offering for guilt. Jesus is like this big sponge, sucks up every last bit of our sin onto himself. He pays all of the penalty that you deserve for sin. All the punishment that you deserve, all the wrath you deserve, that is on Jesus. That's good news. That's good news. All of your sin, past, present, and future, is laid on Jesus. So what does this mean? It means you can't out-sin the love of God. No matter what you do, no matter how far you go, no matter how dark of a hole you find yourself in, you cannot sin. You cannot out-sin the love of God because Jesus has taken every last bit of your sin All of it is on him. What are his last words on the cross? He says, Father, forgive them. Forgive them. This is the word that Jesus speaks for you. This is the word that Jesus speaks over your life. Father, forgive them. You are forgiven fully, freely, and forever. You want to know how much Jesus loves you? Loves you this much. Loves you this much. He dies on a cross for your sin. He takes the wrath that you deserve. Takes the punishment that should be on your shoulders. As Jesus is being beaten with whips, that's what you deserve. As there's a crown of thorns pushed into his head, blood trailing down his face, that's what you deserve. As he dies a criminal's death, suffocating in his own blood and spit, that's what you deserve, and Jesus takes it for you. This is the love of God poured out. This is Jesus, the suffering servant. Jesus goes to the cross with names. You are on his mind when he dies. He's thinking of you. He's picturing your face. He's saying, Father, forgive them. Father, he has your name. Father, forgive Adam. Father, forgive Alex. Forgive Jasmine. Forgive Alexis. Father, forgive them. You can just stick your name in there. I just don't have time to go through the whole room. Father, forgive them. When I was in youth groups, when I was growing up, it was really important that we'd remember when and where we were saved. People would ask you all the time, when were you saved? When were you saved? And the idea was, if you don't remember the moment, if you don't remember the time, you probably weren't saved. You need to have this really crystal clear memory of like the moment when you prayed the prayer. And like, I don't know about you, like, I was like, okay, I'm going to raise my hand every single time they give a salvation call. I'm going to go to the altar all the time. I'm going to rededicate my life over and over and over because I'm so scared. Because it's like, well, I don't remember. Like, what if it wasn't good enough? What if I didn't pray hard enough? What if I didn't do enough? What if I wasn't right? You want to know when you were saved? When and where? 3 o'clock on a Friday, 33 AD in Jerusalem. That's when you were saved. It's not about you. It's not about how good of a prayer you can pray. It's not about the condition of your heart. It's about what Jesus did. He took your sin. He took your guilt. He took your shame. It was on him. He died for it. And so it's not on you to prove your worth to God. It's not on you to prove your sinlessness to God. It's not on you to prove your goodness and your greatness. Listen, you were saved by an event, not an experience. You were saved by an event, not an experience. The death of Jesus for your sin is what saved you. Jesus stood in your place. He bore the wrath of God, and that is what saved you. So it doesn't matter how good of a prayer you prayed. The prayer doesn't save you. If the prayer saves you, then this is witchcraft, and we're like saying some spell, right? The words that you say when you pray, that's not what saves you. It's what Jesus did for you on the cross. That's what saved you from sin. Jesus, and so it is rock solid. Like, you don't got to worry about it. You don't got to worry like, man, I don't feel saved. Doesn't matter if you feel saved or not. It's about what Jesus did, not what you feel. Not about the warm fuzzies that you feel. Had nothing to do with what you did right before you prayed that prayer. Nothing to do with what you did right after. It was a cross. It was Jesus suffering for you. So you don't need to earn it. You don't need to preserve it. You don't need to generate certain feelings. Stop chasing an experience. Rest on a moment. Rest on the moment. When you doubt your salvation, when you doubt whether God loves you, when you doubt whether this is all real, you think back to 33 AD, 3 p.m. on a Friday, and that is what saved you. Doesn't matter how you feel right now. Doesn't matter how strong your faith is or how weak your faith is. It's what Jesus did. It's not what you feel. It's not what you think. It's not what your opinions are. It's what Jesus did. This is the truth of Jesus. And so because of this, you have peace with God. You have peace with God. Look at me. You don't need to earn God's love. You already have it. Some of you just need to be freed by this truth. You're running your whole life around trying to chase peace with God. You're trying to chase God's love. You're trying to chase God's approval. You're trying to chase affirmation and affection because you feel like you don't have it. Listen to me. The cross proves that there is love for you. That you already have God's love. You don't need to work it up. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to deserve it. You need to believe that you have it. You need to rest in that moment. You want the proof of God's love? You look at the cross. Here's what this means. This means God isn't mad at you. You have peace with God. God ain't mad at you. God's not sitting up in heaven with his chancla waiting to smack you over the head for your bad mistakes. That's just not who he is. Jesus already smacked Jesus with a chancla. That's what happened. That's what happened. He said all that wrath, all that punishment, all that condemnation, that's on Jesus. Oh, pow! That's on him. That happened already. So there's no smackdown waiting for you. God's not sitting around waiting to bop a lightning bolt in your head when you screw up. So when you screw up, because you will, because you do, when you screw up, you run to him because you can. Because he's not going to meet you with guilt. He's not going to meet you with his shame. He's not going to meet you with anger. God's not like your parents. Like some of you, like you got this tough relationship with your parents, and like I don't want to ever tell still, mom and dad, if you're watching, I'm sorry. But still, at this point in my life, like it just, sometimes there's stuff I'm so embarrassed about, I don't want to tell my dad about it. Even as an adult. When I was a kid, certainly not. Certainly not. I'm so afraid that like, well, what if I get punished? And so I wouldn't admit things that I was struggling with. I wouldn't admit things that I was dealing with when I really should have. When I needed like and this isn't on him, Dad, if you're watching, I love you. You were a great dad. You're awesome. But like, just in case like he watches this one or something, it's like, well, he's a pastor now. I should watch this sermon. And I'm just dragging him. I love you, Dad. You're great. You're great. But there are moments when I'd feel so much shame. I'd feel so much guilt over my sin that it felt like, man, I can't go talk to my dad about this because he might punish me. He might hurt me. And a lot of times we'll approach God the same way. And we're really afraid. And like we won't be honest with God. But listen, you have peace with God. And so you can be real with God. You can be honest about your mistakes. You can be honest about your sin. And when you mess up, we run to Jesus. We run to the Father because he's already forgiven us. He's already proven his love for us. He's already shown you how much he loves you through the death of his son. All that wrath, all that anger is on Jesus, and it's not on you. God is not mad at you. God is not disappointed in you. God is not ashamed of you. God's never ashamed to call you his kid. Your sin's paid for. You have peace with God. Here's what this means. God is not far away. God is near. There is no barrier in your relationship with the Father. You don't got to like run to him, find him, look for him, search for him. He came to you. That's what Jesus is. God come down from heaven to find mankind. God found humanity, and when he found them, he embraced them. God found humanity, he stretched out his arms for them. There's no separation between you and God. There used to be. Your sin used to separate you. But if you're in Jesus, if Jesus is your king, if you've given him allegiance, if you've said, I'm following him, not anymore. No separation anymore. Because your sin is on Jesus. Your wrath is on Jesus. He's not far from you. So this is what you were made for. So live into this. Live into this. Call on him and he'll answer. Like this is why we read our Bibles and why we pray and why we do these spiritual things. Because God's come to us and he wants to be in a relationship with us. He loves us. He wants to talk with us. Like just like your parent. Like he wants to talk to you. And like maybe you have a bad relationship with your parents and so like it makes it really hard for you to relate to this. But like you need to look past that distorted relationship and look to the perfect relationship that it's supposed to point us to. Like our relationship with our parents is just supposed, the whole reason it exists, it's supposed to point us to the relationship that God wants to have with us. Sometimes our parents make mistakes. They mess up. They make really big mistakes sometimes. And that can mess up our perception of God. But ideally, that healthy relationship with you and your dad, you and your mom, that's meant to point you to the relationship that God wants to have with you. That he loves you. He cares for you. He wants to help you grow. He wants to help you mature. He has things for you to do with your life. And so run to him. He wants to be with you. Call on him and he'll answer. This is my last thing. I didn't get it on your note sheets. But you don't only have peace with God, you have peace with other people. You have peace with other people. Listen, the cross enables you to forgive your enemies. Jesus was punished so you don't have to be. Look at me. Jesus was punished so that they don't have to be. So when you look at people who are in sin, you don't get to have wrath towards them. You don't get to be angry at sinful people anymore. And I know this is hard because there's some sin in this world that just stirs us with anger. And we want to just punch someone in the face. But the truth of the cross is that Jesus was punched in the face so they don't have to be. The truth of the cross is that the wrath of God has already been poured out, and so we don't pour out God's wrath on other people. That's not our place. Romans tells us, brothers, do not avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. We trust the judgment of God. Listen, justice is going to be done for every sin. Either it was done on the cross of Christ, or it's going to be done in eternity in hell. Like, justice will happen. Judgment will come on every sin. So you see that thing on social media that makes your blood boil, and you just want to cut some people out. Take a step back. You don't get to judge. That's what God's going to do. You can have peace with other people. This frees you. Like, you don't have to be executing justice all the time. You don't have to be perpetually angry. And this is what your social media feed is designed to do. It's designed to stir you up into anger and get you so passionate, get you so angry, get you so emotional that you can't think straight. And you just start making all these angry posts, and you're mad at all these different people that you've never met, that have done all sorts of things that you don't even know the full context on, and you just get yourself so worked up and upset. And you don't have to do that. Like, breathe. All these posts, I see these all the time on Instagram. We need to be angry about this. You should be mad about this person who did this thing. Listen, you do not have to be mad. There's no requirement for anger as a Christian. There's no requirement for rage as a follower of Jesus. And there are some requirements for forgiveness. Like, Jesus has taken that burden off your shoulder, so relax. Breathe. Who cares what that person posted? Who cares that you think it's wrong? Doesn't matter. You can relax because you can have peace with other people. Here's the last thing we'll pray. You can have mercy on your brothers and sisters. When people in this room offend you, when people in this room hurt you, when people in this room sin against you, the cross of Jesus means you forgive them. Because you are no better than they are. You deserve just as much wrath as that person did. You deserve to be punched in the face just as much as they do. And so you don't get to punch people in the face. We don't get to be angry at our brothers and sisters because the anger was taken by Jesus. We get to forgive them. We get to love them. We get to be like God. We get to forgive their sin and embrace them and help them move forward. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be stupid. Like, we have good boundaries. Like, we did a whole series on this. I don't have to preach that over again. If you want to go back, you can listen to it on Instagram. You can check out the podcast app. We are on Apple Podcasts if you want to hear all the friendship series. You can have healthy boundaries. You can have some things in place so that you're not getting hurt over and over and over again. But you can embrace people and forgive people and help people move forward because that's what the cross means. Because of the cross, you have peace with God. You have peace with others. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your forgiveness and your love. Thank you that wrath is not the end of the story, that judgment is not the end of the story, that forgiveness is where the story's headed, that you sent your Son to bear all of our sin, to bear all of our guilt, to take all of our shame. You've brought peace between us and you, that you love us, you forgive us. You've brought peace between us and other people. You've enabled us and empowered us to love them, to forgive them. Jesus, I pray that this truth would strike deep down into our hearts, that we would believe it, that we would live it out and put it into practice. Love you. We thank you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Jesus, you are better than anything in this world. Love you guys. See you next week. Trademark After Dark is going to start in about 10 minutes. We'll give time for people to cycle out.